On December 24th, 2024, NASA did something that scientists once claimed was impossible. A spacecraft about the size of a car dived straight into the blazing atmosphere of the Sun. It traveled at a terrifying speed, 430,000 miles per hour. It officially became the fastest man-made object in human history. At that speed, it would take you only 20 seconds to fly from New York to Los Angeles. As soon as the ship disappeared behind the burning corona, all communication signals froze in absolute silence. They did not know if their creation was still alive or if it had been turned to ash in the middle of a hellscape. This is the story of humanity's journey to actually touch a star and the terrifying truth hidden behind that fiery curtain. While most of the world was busy wrapping late Christmas presents and enjoying peaceful melodies with family, a thick atmosphere hung over the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory in Maryland. Not a sound, not a whisper, not a single distracted eye. Dozens of the most brilliant minds on the planet were glued to their screens. They watched the Parker Solar Probe perform a suicide dive. It plunged straight into the darkest regions, where classical physics equations once predicted every structure would melt. The Sun's outermost atmosphere is not a gentle mist. It is a war zone of toxic plasma and extreme magnetic fields, where the ordinary laws of physics are distorted beyond recognition. When the ship reached its maximum speed of 692,000 kilometers per hour at perihelion, it wasn't just moving fast. It was challenging the endurance limits of man-made materials. The massive kinetic energy turned the ship into a silver arrow tearing through space. But that same kinetic energy was ready to crush it into a cloud of atoms. With just a 1/1,000,000th of a degree angular error, the shield would evaporate. The distance from Earth to the Sun at that time was over 140 million kilometers, meaning radio waves took more than 8 minutes to complete a one-way journey. This means that by the time engineers saw the last stream of data on their screens, the ship had actually entered deep into the corona 8 minutes prior. Whether it survived or died, humans could not intervene in real time. Every automated control system on board had to make its own decisions. It had to manage itself, adjusting its tilt angle to protect itself against the fury of a giant nuclear reactor hanging in the void. The radio silence lasted for the next several hours, turning the operations center into a morgue of fragile hopes. Every passing second felt like a century to those who had dedicated their lives to the project. They understood that behind that brilliant and magnificent halo was a terrifying world where temperatures could overturn all logical thinking, an ultimate frontier that humanity had never dared to approach. To understand this madness, let's dissect the mother star. The Sun contains a century-old paradox. Its surface is called the photosphere. This is a roaring ocean of hydrogen and helium gas, constantly undergoing violent nuclear fusion. The Sun's core compresses matter under immense pressure. Maximum gravity crushes atomic nuclei. 4 protons are squeezed together to form one helium nucleus. This process releases a massive amount of gamma energy. The temperature at the photosphere reaches 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, or 5,500 degrees Celsius. This heat melts every compound on Earth. Even the hardest diamonds turn into liquid instantly. They evaporate into single atoms in the blink of an eye. This reactor has been operating continuously for the past 4.6 billion years, consuming 600 million tons of hydrogen every second. But the real hell lies in the atmosphere above. Let's leave the surface of the photosphere to enter the solar atmosphere. Scientists call this anomalous region of space the corona. According to the laws of thermodynamics, the further you are from a heat source, the cooler it should be. Heat must dissipate as distance increases. But the corona betrays common physical logic. It breaks every classical mathematical equation. The temperature here suddenly jumps in an irrational way, ranging from 1 million to 3 million degrees Fahrenheit. Imagine this from a practical perspective. You are standing far away from a large bonfire. As you step back, your body does not feel cooler. Instead, you are suddenly incinerated by a monstrous blast of heat. It is 300 times hotter than jumping into the fire itself. This temperature increase is completely insane. It creates the phenomenon known as the coronal heating problem. This is a stain on the map of astrophysics. This problem has challenged humanity since 1939. Scientists have been helpless for nearly a century. Why does the region furthest from the core accumulate such terrifying energy? The invisible plasma curtain of the corona is a death trap. Extreme magnetic fields choke and accelerate ionic particles. Massive magnetic loops constantly break. The process of magnetic reconnection releases monstrous kinetic energy. They bombard charged particles with maximum power, exciting them to ultimate supersonic speeds. This movement creates devastating kinetic pressure, ready to tear apart any sturdy metal structure. The corona is not a quiet, stable structure. It is a vivid entity, constantly contracting. It continuously shoots out deadly tentacles of energy. These form high-level solar wind streams. This flood is filled with charged protons and electrons, breaking away from the mother star's gravity. This relentless, devastating flow bombards the solar system. It sweeps through space at millions of miles per hour. As it sweeps past, it strips the atmospheres of planets. Mars once had large oceans and rivers, but the solar wind turned it into a dead desert. Earth survives thanks to its sturdy magnetic shield. The spinning liquid iron core creates a protective barrier. But the Parker Solar Probe does not have that magnetic shield. Diving into the heart of a million-degree monster is technological suicide. To perform this insane mission, humanity needed a great mind, someone who saw the cosmic flow from the dawn of time. In 1958, a young astrophysicist appeared. His name was Eugene Parker, and he worked at the University of Chicago. He sat at his desk and performed complex calculations. At that time, humanity believed that space was completely empty. The universe was an absolute dark and silent vacuum. But Parker saw a completely different truth. He argued that space was not a dead vacuum. The universe is a churning ocean of charged particles. Superheated plasma constantly erupts from the sun's burning core. Immense kinetic pressure pushes them past the star's gravity. They tear through space and hurtle into interplanetary space. He named this anomalous phenomenon solar wind. He wrote a revolutionary scientific paper. Parker confidently sent his work to the Astrophysical Journal, the most prestigious scientific sanctuary of the time. But the scientific community threw a bucket of ice-cold water on him. His paper was flatly rejected and thrown into the trash by reviewers. They included the most biting and mocking criticisms. Academia considered his hypothesis a ridiculous joke. One leading expert told him to go to the library and reread the textbooks. They claimed his theory was completely insane. The solar wind directly contradicted the laws of quantum mechanics. They believed the sun's atmosphere was in a state of static equilibrium. No force could accelerate matter particles to supersonic speeds. Parker faced a wave of fierce boycotts from his colleagues. But the young engineer was not the type to easily surrender to the majority. He persistently defended his mathematical equations to the end. He fought alone against the entire academic establishment of the time. He believed in the correctness of the numbers on the page. Fortunately, Editor-in-Chief Subramanian Chandrasekhar took notice. He was a genius astrophysicist of Indian origin who later won the Nobel Prize in Physics. Chandrasekhar did not entirely agree with the solar wind theory, but he could not find any mathematical errors in the paper. He decided to gamble his personal reputation. Chandrasekhar published the paper despite all the fierce opposition. Just 2 years later, a shocking historical turning point occurred. In 1960, NASA's Explorer 10 spacecraft flew into deep space. Next, the Mariner 2 mission headed straight for fiery Venus. Both ships directly measured this stream of charged particles. Sensors recorded plasma waves moving at monstrous speeds. The existence of solar wind was officially confirmed. The scientific community was stunned by the truth. Parker instantly became the great prophet of astronomy. He reshaped humanity's understanding of space weather. Because of that great contribution, NASA made a historic decision. They named the mission after a living scientist. This decision was unprecedented in the agency's history. They honored the man who changed the flow of human knowledge. In the summer of 2018, Professor Eugene Parker was 91 years old. He stood at the Cape Canaveral launch site in Florida. With snow-white hair, he watched the ship bearing his name soar into the sky. The Delta IV Heavy rocket tore through the night with a brilliant flame. It was a breathtakingly emotional moment for humanity. Tears rolled down the old professor's cheeks. The great professor passed away in 2022 at the age of 94. He lived long enough to see his brainchild send the first data back to Earth. How could a man-made mechanical structure survive in this environment, where materials like steel, aluminum, or titanium would melt and vaporize? That was the difficult question that imprisoned this idea for over 60 years. The problem was only solved thanks to breakthroughs in 21st century materials science. As the Parker Solar Probe approached perihelion, the shield faced temperatures of 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This is approximately 1,370 degrees Celsius, far exceeding the melting point of most metals. This temperature is hotter than the basaltic lava flows newly erupted from the Earth's crust. This heat shield is officially named the Thermal Protection System, TPS. It is a structure that looks fragile but possesses resilient endurance. Its thickness is only 11.4 centimeters, and its diameter is about 2.4 meters. It is not made of thick metal plates. It was designed with a genius sandwich structure. The two surface plates are made of an ultra-light carbon-carbon composite compound. This material's mechanical strength increases as the temperature rises. This is the opposite of ordinary metals, which weaken when heated. The inner core is a layer of ultra-light density carbon foam. The key point is that this foam contains up to 97% microscopic vacuum spaces. Since heat cannot travel through a vacuum via conduction, this structure almost completely eliminated the penetration of heat. The ultimate coating on the front of the shield facing the sun is sprayed with a special fired ceramic layer. This pure white aluminum oxide-based ceramic layer acts like a mirror. It bounces most of the blinding radiation energy back into space, protecting the hull. Thanks to this peak structure, an unprecedented technological paradox occurred. While the front of the shield was glowing red-hot at nearly 1,400 degrees Celsius, right behind it, the temperature remained stable at 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 29 degrees Celsius. All the fragile electronic components were operating in a cool environment. This ideal temperature is equivalent to your air-conditioned room in the summer. But the biggest mystery that confuses many people lies in the nature of heat physics. Why is the corona millions of degrees hot, but the shield only reaches 1,370 degrees Celsius? NASA engineers explain this based on the difference between temperature and heat. Temperature is a measure of how fast individual particles move in an environment. The corona has a temperature of millions of degrees because the ions are strongly excited by magnetic fields. They move at maximum supersonic speeds. Heat, however, is a measure of the total actual energy transferred through direct collisions. Because the corona is an extremely thin, gaseous environment, approaching an absolute vacuum, the density of particles per unit volume is ultra-low. Imagine you could put your hand inside a 200°C toaster oven. You wouldn't be hurt for a few seconds because the low density of air particles transfers little heat. But if you touch a pot of boiling water at 100°C, you will be severely burned immediately. The density of water particles is thousands of times higher than air. Because the corona is ultra-thin, the number of particles colliding with the TPS shield is very small. The total actual heat transferred to the ship is entirely manageable. Not stopping there, at a speed of 430,000 miles per hour, the ship must plunge through plasma shock waves. Extreme magnetic vortices want to twist and break the mechanical frame. To handle this monstrous inertial force, engineers designed fixed joints with high elasticity. They have the ability to bend slightly, like bamboo nodes. This design allows the ship to bend itself, absorbing and dissipating kinetic impulses. It does not rigidly resist only to crack, helping the ship adapt maximally to adversity. You cannot just launch a ship and fly straight into the sun. This is a very complex truth of orbital geometry. Earth moves around the sun at a massive speed. The orbital velocity reaches 30 kilometers per second. This figure is equivalent to over 100,000 kilometers per hour. Any object leaving Earth carries that kinetic energy. If you fire a rocket directly at the sun, you will fail. The high lateral velocity turns the trajectory into a wide ellipse. The ship would fly around the star rather than falling into the center. To slow down, mathematicians used a clever tactic, the Venus gravity assist technique. Venus acts as a great natural brake. This planet possesses a massive gravity well. It changes the ship's orbit as it skims through the atmosphere. The journey has lasted 6 years since 2018. The Parker Solar Probe had to fly close to Venus a total of 7 times. Each time it approached, the ship shed more kinetic energy. Venus's gravity pulled and slowed the ship's lateral speed. The orbit turned into an increasingly narrow spiral. It was like a rope tightly winding around a pulley. After each cycle, the perihelion was pushed deeper inside. It continuously set new records for distance and speed. During 6 years of tightening the orbital knot, the equipment operated continuously. The ship discovered Z-shaped magnetic structures. Scientists named this phenomenon switchbacks. They are like invisible quantum energy whips. They lash out into space, releasing massive kinetic energy. Switchbacks are the #1 suspect for accelerating the solar wind. The ship bravely plunged through CME eruptions. It took a direct hit from solar system plasma storms. It sent back direct measurements from the heart of the Fury. On the morning of December 24, 2024, the historic moment arrived. the ship entered its final perihelion approach. The distance narrowed to 3.8 million miles. This figure is equivalent to about 6.1 million kilometers. It crossed the final radio limit boundary. The ship sank into the absolute blind zone of the universe. Electromagnetic radiation from plasma particles created a massive wall of interference. It broke and swallowed every radio wave sent back. The $1.5 billion ship was completely alone. It was like a blind soldier walking into an energy minefield. A single tilt of the shield and tragedy would strike. An error of 1 degree would turn the structure into steam. Everything would evaporate in a brief millisecond. In the operations room, tension reached its peak. The countdown clock ticked away in terrifying silence. 36 continuous hours without a single radio signal returning. Not a beep, not a line of system status. Many engineers did not dare look at the monitoring screens. They clenched their hands together, praying in helplessness. They placed their faith in the resilience of the carbon foam. On the night of December 26th, a graph suddenly flashed. A single frequency beep echoed in the operations room. The signal pierced through the interference and returned to the Earth network. The Deep Space Network had caught the ship's signal. The ship had miraculously survived the trial of hell. It was swinging back out into safe space. Its memory carried the greatest treasure trove of data in history. In early 2025, the first gigabytes of data were decoded. The terrifying reality of the sun's interior was clearly exposed. The Whisper camera system sent back chilling images. This is where the solar wind is actually born and nurtured. It is not a gentle flow, as we imagined. It is a tangled network of magnetic explosions. Micro-explosions occur continuously with high density. The data confirmed the phenomenon of solar wind U-turns. This is a terrifying mechanism of the massive plasma flow. After being pushed away, they encounter extreme magnetic fields. The magnetic force bends the particle flow at a 180-degree angle. They are pulled violently back toward the surface at high speeds. The process creates a chain energy feedback phenomenon. It is like a pressure pump forcing energy into the corona. This explains the insane temperatures of millions of degrees Celsius. Parker found a magnificent chaotic magnetic engine. The discoveries of the Parker Solar Probe throughout 2025 are not just mere theories. They are life and death data directly related to the survival of civilization. Currently, in 2026, the Sun is in the maximum phase of its 11-year activity cycle. The corona is bulging and performing coronal mass ejections with dizzying frequency. Each CME explosion releases an amount of energy equivalent to billions of atomic bombs. It throws a billion-ton plasma cloud into interplanetary space. Imagine that monstrous plasma cloud hitting Earth directly. It would trigger a devastating technological apocalypse scenario. Earth's magnetic field would be choked under the pressure. Extreme geomagnetic storm phenomena would explode on a wide scale. First, the global power grid would collapse completely. Strong induced currents would run along extra-high voltage lines. They would act like giant antennas capturing bad energy. The monster currents would blow up large core transformers. Central switching stations would burst into flames. Dense copper cores would be melted into mechanical liquid. It would take humans years to recycle and replace them. Entire major continents would plunge into a long-term darkness. Next, the global internet system would be permanently disconnected. Signal repeaters on the deep sea floor would suffer voltage shocks. Vital submarine fiber optic cables would be completely paralyzed. GPS navigation satellites would have their circuit boards destroyed by charged particle streams. Fragile differential components would instantly evaporate in space. International trade would freeze. Aviation systems would lose guidance signals. The tragedy would continue to escalate to the ultimate limit. All financial, medical, and energy activities would stop. Data banks would be empty due to sudden power loss. Ventilators in hospitals would run out of backup power. Clean water management systems would stop working, causing a major crisis. The chain collapse would push humanity back to a dark age. The entire tragedy would take place in a single day. In 1859, the Carrington Event storm occurred. At that time, humans only used crude telegraph systems. But the induced current burned telegraph offices. Message paper burst into flames right on the engineers' desks. Brilliant auroras appeared in equatorial regions. It was so bright that people could read newspapers at night. The world of 2026 is closely linked by microchip networks. If a second Carrington event repeated, the consequences would be horrific. Digital civilization would be completely wiped out. Field data from the Parker Solar Probe is the foundation stone. It helps humanity prevent that horrifying scenario. We understand the particle acceleration mechanism from its source. The switchback and U-turn structures have been decoded in detail. The reversing magnetic fields have been mapped accurately in 3 dimensions. Scientists are building new forecasting models. NOAA and NASA are collaborating to develop a warning system. Instead of just 15 minutes of helpless short warning, humans will have a week of preparation. This time is enough for engineers to proactively disconnect the power grid. They will move satellites into absolute safe havens. Earth's magnetic shield will protect human technology. The journey into the heart of the star proves human intelligence. We dare to reach out with mechanical hands to touch the divine. Humanity brings back protection for its own future. If you feel this journey to touch the sun has brought progressive knowledge, please press the like button. The algorithm will spread this message to more people. And don't forget to press subscribe so you don't miss the next deep analyses. Because in the next video, we will together dissect a shocking discovery, something the James Webb Space Telescope just sent back from the edge of the observable universe. an anomalous structure that, according to all current physics equations, simply should not be allowed to exist. Thank you for watching.